Hello everyone. In this video, we will be talking about briefing and instrument approach. Before we go on to the details of why briefing and instrument approach is important, I'll give you the motivation of why you should know how to brief and approach the way I'm going to tell you. When I went for my airline interview, I was asked to brief an instrument approach, and the pilot examiner, was actually very happy with the way I briefed the approach. He said that it is always important to explain or brief an approach in a structured manner so that you are able to fly it comfortably. This is also the reason I'm making this video, because apart from the fact that you will be asked to brief an instrument approach during your training for the instrument check ride, it is also important for a good instrument rated pilot to brief the approach properly before flying the approach. Briefing the approach prepares you for the approach. You know the fixes, you know the altitudes, the frequencies to talk to, the minimums, the approach light systems, etc. Every approach has its own intricate details that every pilot must know before flying that particular procedure. A good pilot should be the one who can open up any random instrument approach and be able to comfortably brief and read the instrument approach plate for their own practical purpose. So let's get started. So I've pulled up here ILS or localizer runway 20 in Chattanooga. Let's create a scenario. Our aircraft is coming in from Grand intersection or fix over here, inbound 312 direct to Daisy. The ATC instructions are November 123 X-ray Yankee, an arbitrary number, fly direct to Daisy NDB and join the procedure turn outbound. This clearance allows me to fly direct to Daisy and then join the procedure turn outbound, do the procedure turn and then come back inbound. I'm hoping to get a clearance along the way, but I haven't gotten the clearance yet. So for now, I will brief the full instrument approach, the way I'm going to fly it, including the procedure turn. So let's get started. This is how I will be briefing the instrument approach. Me and a co-pilot, we are flying. Let's say the co-pilot is my student, so I'm the one who is showing the student how to brief an instrument approach. I will also be talking about what are the important things to brief and explain why we are briefing different things. We will be performing ILS runway 20 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The ATIS frequency is 119.85, approach frequency is 125.1. We are talking to the center, I'm guessing again in this scenario, and we have put in the tower and the ground frequencies in case in the secondary radio. The localizer frequency is 109.5, final approach course is 202. We will be intercepting our glide slope at 2055 feet at Hickson. ILS decision altitude is 873, decision height is 200 feet for category 1 ILS. AGL, of course, airport elevation is 683, touchdown zone elevation is 673. On the missed approach, we'll be climbing to 1300, then climbing left turn to 3100, direct to Golf, Quebec, Oscar, VOR and hold. Continue climb and hold to 3100. Minimum safe altitude is 3900 around the Daisy NDB. We are headed direct to Daisy NDB. Now I'm looking at the plan view. So I finished the briefing strip. Now I'll go down and look at the plan view to brief all my initial approach fixes, how am I going to do the procedure, etc. I'm flying direct to Daisy. When I'm at Daisy, I will fly outbound on a bearing of 022. Remember bearing because it's an NDB. I purposely chose this plate because it's not very common that you use an NDB or a locator outer marker, but it's interesting to know. You can use bearing 022, or if you look at the final approach course, it is 202. So the opposite of 202 will be 022. So you can use either the localizer or the bearing to fly the procedure turn. So you'll be flying 022 outbound and making the procedure turn, turning right 067 and a left turn to 247 to intercept 202 inbound. We can only go within 10 miles from the NDB, which is the procedure turn fix. How do I know NDB is the procedure turn fix? I briefly looked at the profile view to see where my procedure turn starts from, and 10 nautical miles is written there, so 10 nautical miles from the NDB. While doing the procedure turn, we will be maintaining a maximum of 200 knots indicated airspeed. because that is required, and we will be maintaining within 10 nautical miles of the Daisy ND. When we are established inbound, hoping that we have gotten the clearance by now, we will continue inbound, and now we are able to descend to 3000. Whenever you are established on the final approach course, that is the time to transition to the profile view. Now I'm looking at the profile view because that is what you will be flying on the final approach course. So 3000 feet is the altitude that I will maintain until the NDB, the Daisy NDB. So after the NDB, I can descend to 2500 if I'm doing the ILS, which is what I'm briefing for. But since I'm teaching this and I'm talking to my student, I'm also going to tell them that if we were to do the localizer, then we would descend down to 2100, because that's the altitude for our final approach fix. You can take a look at the difference in which it is displayed on Jeppesen as well as the FAA chart. See the difference here? For the ILS approach, the Jeppesen plate tells you 2500 is the altitude you maintain for the ILS, and glide slope interception will occur at Charlie Foxtrot Delta Tango Juliet at 2500 feet. So that is the final approach fix for the ILS, because that's where you intercept the glide slope at 2500 feet CDI and the glide slope center. But for the localizer, your final approach fix will be where the cross is at Hickson, and you will be maintaining 2100 up until then if you are doing the localizer. If you guys have any questions regarding how approaches work, how ILS works, different types of approaches, final approach fix for localizer, ILS, precision, non-precision, any of these questions, and you feel that you might need some resource that will help you to learn this better, make sure you check out my website PropelAPilot.com, which has a course arriving in IFR that makes it very easy to understand instrument arrivals as well as approaches. I go over multiple examples and talk about everything in detail, just like how I'm doing right now. Actually, even more in detail when I'm doing my courses. So we are doing the ILS. We'll be maintaining 2500 after the NDB. Intercept the glide slope at 2500 at Charlie Foxtrot Delta Tango Juliet. When we intercept a glide slope, we'll be following the glide slope down to our decision altitude, which we have already briefed, and that is 873 feet. At decision altitude, if we don't have the required visibility and the minimums, we'll discontinue the approach, go missed, and follow the missed approach instructions as briefed before. What are our minimums? Now we transition to our minimums table. The next thing we'll brief is the minimums. So we transition down to the minimums area. We talk about our minimums for the particular approach you are going to do based on the category of aircraft you fall into. This is how I'll brief it. The minimums for this approach for category A aircraft will be RVR 1800 feet or half a statute mile required at a decision altitude of 873 feet. This is what we would brief because that is what you are practically flying. If there is any malfunction, if the approach light system is not working, the altimeter settings are not working, then you have to change the minimums accordingly. Jeppesen makes it easier. As you can see on the chart, they already give you the different minimums based on different things that are inoperative, and instead of going to the inoperative table and making the changes, you have it right in front of you. If you're using an FA approach plate, then you would have to actually go and look into the inoperative components table and then change the minimums accordingly. Again, if you don't know, check out my course. We talk about it in detail. This is how you brief an instrument approach up until now. Once you are done talking about the minimums, I would again talk about the missed approach, since it is given there at the top, and you will see exactly what you talk about, because you have those small little icons, so you can brief the instrument approach quickly and read it from there. At our DA, if we don't have our minimums, we will be going missed, climb 1300 feet, turn left, climb to 3100 feet, go to Golf Quebec Oscar, which is the choo-choo VOTAC, and hold, and climbing and hold to 3100. That's it. So to summarize, a good briefing must start with the name of the procedure, the airport, the frequencies, then talk about the localizer frequency, final approach course, airport elevation, touchdown zone elevation, talk about the landing, runway landing distance, which is given in the FA chart, not given in the briefing part of the Jeppesen plate. Both the plates have their own pros and cons. Depending on the plate you're using, your briefing might be a little different. But again, the primary elements still remain the same. Then you talk about the minimum safe altitude, which is always given on the top left or right corner of these plates. Then go to the plan view, talk about the fixes, the initial approach fix, intermediate fix. This one doesn't have those. This one has a procedure turn. So we brief the procedure turn looking at the plan view. Then look at the profile view to know the distance from the procedure turn fix, which is the procedure turn fix. Once you are established on the final approach course, you talk about the final approach course using the profile view. What is the final approach fix? What is the glide slope interception altitude? What is the altitude for non-precision final approach fixes? Then if you're doing a precision approach, you talk about the DA. If you're doing a non-precision approach, you'll be talking about the step down fixes and an MDA. And in case of a localizer or a VR approach, you might have a time and distance table to identify the missed approach point. So you will be briefing that as well. Unfortunately, we were doing ILS in this example, so it didn't come into my briefing, but that would be a part of the briefing as well. Once you are done briefing about the profile view, then you go down, talk about the minimums for the category that you are performing based on whatever lights are working or not. After that, you will be talking about the missed approach, again looking at the small symbols, because this is the order in which you are going to fly. So you're going to fly the plan view first, you're going to fly the initial approach fix, the procedure turn, etc. Then you're going to fly the final approach fix, the final approach course. Then you will reach your DA, which we briefed in the profile view. Then you will make a decision of continuing or going missed. That's why we talk about the minimum step. If you decide to go missed, then you talk about the missed approach. So you brief in the order in which you are performing. This is how I think is the most practical way of briefing an instrument approach. Also, this is the most thorough way so that you don't miss anything. You should always brief an instrument approach procedure based on what you're going to do today, what you're going to do now. So it is always a good idea to position yourself on a particular path of the instrument approach, and then give yourself a scenario, a clearance that you are flying this way, you are at this fix, at this altitude, you are given this clearance. How are you going to perform and brief the instrument approach from this point? That's how you should practice the briefing. Now, for those of you who have stayed until the end to watch my video, I will give you a small little trick to impress the examiner. Something that I did, and it pretty much impressed everyone I was briefing for. What I do is I brief the approach light system when I'm talking about my DA or MDA. So this is how I put my approach light system into my briefing. Let's start from the final approach fix. We'll be intercepting our glide slope at Charlie Foxtrot Delta Tango Juliet at 2,500 feet. Continue following our glide slope down to our DA, which is 873 feet. 873 feet, we should be looking out, and we might spot ALSEF 2, which has two side row bars. If we see the ALSEF 2, we can continue to 100 feet above touchdown zone. If we don't see ALSEF 2, there's a good chance we don't have the minimums and we should execute the missed approach. This is a little bit that I add in extra to my briefing, but it makes it very practical and really, really interesting, because you are actually going to see the ALSEF 2 when you actually fly. So why not brief what you should see? Where can this be important? Let's say you have parallel runways and you have a very strong crosswind. If you are grabbing into the wind and pointing towards the parallel runway which has ALSEF 1, in your head that is not the right runway, because you briefed ALSEF 2 before. If you didn't brief the approach light system before, and you don't want to be at 200 feet AGL looking at your instrument approach plate to see which one is the right runway to land. Hence, this is my small tip for everyone who stayed until the end of the video. I hope this video helps you guys in your training, as well as whenever you give your interviews for a CFI job, a commercial job, or an airline job. For those of you who are new to PropelAPilot, what are you doing? Just subscribe, man. Go and check out my website, PropelAPilot.com. It has a lot of courses for pilots, people like you who are willing to learn and make yourself better while you are in training. And also follow me on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube to be up to date with the aviation world and to whatever content I upload. Thank you. See you in the next video.